Hi, today we are going to talk about one of the 11 types of bullies that you'll encounter. Today we're going to talk about the bully neighbor. So this is a unique situation. You are forced to live next to someone who is harassing you, threatening to assault you, ruining your peace of mind and your ability to relax in your own home or apartment. So we're going to talk about unwinnable situations. Okay, there are some neighbor situations where the only thing you could realistically do would be to move, but we're going to talk about each situation in detail because it's a broad subject. Okay, so I have a friend. She lives in another state. She used to be a girlfriend actually, but after many years of drug use, she has mental health issues. Okay, she's not strong up here. Okay, so she has a battle with her neighbor. Her neighbor is a definite bully. Her neighbor is in his 70s. He's a gun nut. He has guns, okay? So it's not easy to confront a guy with guns, right? Especially not a 70-year-old. When you're 70, a life sentence is not that scary. A life sentence is only 4 or 5 years in prison. You're not going to do 20 years if you're 70, right? So this neighbor of my friend, when she goes to work, she finds her cat dead, killed, bloody, killed on her front doorstep. Is that bully? That's definite bully, right? And when she is asleep, she wakes up, all her tires have been slashed on her car. So she calls the police, right? Big mistake. Here's why. You have no evidence. She did not record him killing the cat. She did not record him popping the tires. If she did, he'd be in jail and she'd have a restraining order and she'd have all the protections in the law. Right? But she has no evidence. So it's just, she calls the police prematurely, okay? The police come, they go, well, without evidence, there's nothing we can do. And the police were not taking her side of the issue because of her mental health. That's why I was saying in the other videos, I'm saying, oh, you have a mental health crisis? Keep that to yourself and behave as normal as possible because it's going to be used against you. Okay? Because if you have mental health issues, I'm depressed, I'm suicidal, and then the police officer or the attorney or the court, they're going to automatically bias. They're going to go, this person's crazy. This person is, delusional. Okay, so don't hurt yourself that way. It's no one's going to give you any advantages by you declaring your mental health problems to anyone or expressing them in a public way. If you have a breakdown when you're trying to tell the cop what happened, that does not help your situation at all. It helps your bad neighbor, okay? So what resolution could my neighbor, my friend, what advice would I give her? Well, remember our primary goal when it's dealing with bullies. Our primary goal is to stop the bullying, okay? It's not to kill them or hurt them or make them move, okay? Because all of those things are very risky and can backfire, and also there's consequences when you escalate a problem. when you make it bigger, there's more chances for it to blow up in your face, where you could be the loser, like my ex-girlfriend. She's the loser in that situation. She lost her cat. She had to pay for the tires and the other vandalism that he did. And she also loses sleep at night, wondering what his next attack is going to be. So if you don't do this correctly, you could be a loser. So the goal is to shrink the problem until nothing, until the neighbor leaves you alone and you leave the neighbor alone. Isn't that the best possible scenario? That's the scenario we're shooting for, okay? We're not trying to provoke the neighbor or win any arguments or prove that they are wrong and you are right. We're not doing any of that. We're trying to get a ceasefire, a truce, a plan in which you can mutually coexist next to each other without wanting to hurt each other. So that's the goal for the bully neighbor. So in her situation, most of her problems could be solved by closed circuit camera, by a Ring doorbell, okay, by security camera that goes on when motion sensor light. You can't come on my property without me knowing. My phone will tell me. When you get to the when you get to my driveway, it's already send me a silent, hey, we spotted someone on your property. And then if I click that, it'll show me who's on my property, right? So the same with the Ring doorbell. It's got a wide scan and it's going to show exactly who's coming up. But so these types of tools are super important for when you have these conflicts. You need to have evidence of who came and popped your tires, who killed your cat, because he would be in jail right now probably for 6 months. Even with his age, he maliciously killed someone's cat. He'd do at least 6 months in jail for that. So yeah, instead of going to jail, she now has she's still stressing from the possible next attack of the bad neighbor. Okay, so I want to remind you that, like in that scenario I just explained, some neighbors will kill your pets, okay? And some will vandalize your car. Some will throw trash in your yard, okay? And some will play loud music all night, okay? I was one of those neighbors who would play loud music all night, and that was to the my neighbors. When I was a bad neighbor, okay, now I'm a good neighbor, right? Because I'm no longer a criminal or selling drugs or using drugs, so I'm a good neighbor. All right, but when I was a bad neighbor, okay, what was happening was this. I remember that I was playing my music loud because I stayed up late, right? And the neighbor did that thing. He took the broom and he hit his ceiling, which is my floor, right? And so what do you think I did? I started stomping my feet. I'm surprised I didn't actually break the floor and go down into his area. So that is I was the bully, right? So what would have stopped me in that situation? Well, you didn't know who I was, right? Okay. When I did that stomping and I'm having a noise war with him and I turned it up even louder, right? What was happening was he didn't know my vulnerabilities. If he had done a background check on me and learned who I was, he would have realized, oh, you just got out of prison. Oh, you're on parole. Oh, right? I know your vulnerability. I just had to call the parole department and you'll go back to prison. But see, he didn't do that due diligence, which I'm recommending you do for most of your bad neighbor problems, is find out who they are and what their history is. Do a background check on them, because now you'll know. That would have stopped me for sure if you would have said, hey, Alex, I know you're on parole. I know you have warrants. I know that you just got out of prison. So I need you to stop making that noise at night. Stop with the loud music. If not, I have no choice but to call the parole office. That would have made me stop, because he knows too much about me. He knows my vulnerability, and he's coming from a position of strength. The bully only respects strength, and it's not his strength. He's not the strength. It's the strength of the parole office. It's the strength of the police department. It's the strength of the courtroom and the judge. Those are things that concern me and will make me stop. You know what? If I'm violent, right? Even back then when I was a criminal, and now, if I'm violent, okay, do you know how you get me to stop right away? Oh, the cops are on their way. If you say that, all of a sudden my brain, I'm out of there. Because you know my vulnerability. That's my kryptonite, man. So that is the case with most bullies, okay? Because when you bully, you're going to have encounter with the law eventually, right? People call the police on bullies. So you're going to have, logically, you have to find your bullies, your neighbors' vulnerable spots, if any. If there are no vulnerable spots, guess what? It makes it harder. But usually, I spent a lifetime of bullying and criming. So my record, my history shows that. And what I'm suggesting is this. Okay, I have a neighbor here. All right. Oh no, all of a sudden we were nice and now we're just arguing and we're bitter and we're doing these petty games against each other, and it's getting serious where I don't trust him around my dog or my children or something, right? I'm concerned for my safety. I need to hire a private investigator to do a background check on him. And you're simply going to find a private investigator locally. You know how much they charge? The average private investigator makes $16 an hour. That's the same as a fast food worker. So these are usually, they are either former military or former police officer, but they have the experience, and they would, first of all, I say, I'm having a conflict with my neighbor. I want to do some research on him. I want to know where he works, what his last name is, what his background, does he have any previous criminal record, and I want to know everything I can about him. The private investigator goes to work, and then he prepares a report. That's probably going to cost less than $100. Okay? Now you know who you're dealing with, what their vulnerabilities are, right? So, is he an MMA fighter? Is he a former Green Beret? Or, now. Okay, who are you dealing with? Because before that, you didn't know, right? Like, I've had some neighbors, I remember, that they never came out, right? They would just look through the curtain like this, and there always lights were out, super quiet, almost like a vacant home. I always wondered, who did you kill that you have to hide this way? It was, but they were never disrespectful. They were not bad neighbors, but you were like, you're behaving as if, right, you are extremely vulnerable. But back to the neighbors. Okay, bad neighbors will throw trash in your yard. Okay, bad neighbors will play loud music all night, throw parties. Some of your neighbors are pedophiles. Okay, so if you have children and you got this creepy bad neighbor, I mean, yeah, some of your neighbors are pedophiles. Okay, you know that, right? There's websites where you can check in certain states to see who is a registered sex offender in your area, and yeah, they may not be bullies, but you better keep an eye on them. Okay, so some are dope fiends. A lot of your neighbors that are bullying you are also dope fiends. Okay, because that behavior goes in sync together. They get high, they get loud, and then the neighbor says, "Hey, could you please stop smoking some crack in there?" And then, no, we're not. And get the hell, right? And so the conflicts start, okay? So, in a survey, okay, 42% of Americans said they have had a serious dispute with their neighbor, okay? So that's almost half of all neighbors report having a serious dispute with their neighbor. So it's terribly common, right? Even the senator, Rand Paul, got his butt kicked by his neighbor, okay? Now, I think the neighbor was awesome for doing it, but the fact remains that even wealthy people, millionaires, they still have bad neighbors. Like Dennis Rodman. I grew up in Orange County. So Dennis Rodman had a house on Newport Beach, right? He had a beach house right on the beach, and because he's wealthy, right? Well, all of his neighbors are wealthy. And so when he throws those big parties and they all park in the other neighbors' yards and stuff, and the loud music, he's being a bully to his wealthy neighbors. And you see this all the time. Clint Eastwood was a bully to his neighbors when he asked for certain privileges in the city of Carmel, and they didn't give it to him because he's Clint Eastwood. He doesn't deserve special favor. He ran for mayor of Carmel, got the job, and then he passed the law that gave him what he wanted. Talk about a bully, right? He says, "Give me what I want," and then they said no, and he ran for mayor, won, and now he changed the law the way he wants it. Wow. Okay, so we're going to talk about the different subcategories of bad neighbors. Bad neighbors is one of the 11 major types of bullies. And in the subcategory we have, in no particular order, neighborhood teenagers, right? Neighborhood teenagers can be bullies, right? I was a bully as a neighborhood teenager. I was also the guy most likely to break into your car. If something was missing, like your bike, I was a bad teen, right? So, I caused, and if you stood up to me, I would bully you. I would throw rocks at your house. I would harass you. Okay, that's what I did to neighbors who stood up to me when I was a teenager. Okay, so what would have stopped me? Again, a background check, because when I was fighting with my neighbors, right, physical fist fights, right, because they're men, but I'm a stubborn teenager, and I'm getting punched by men because I want to fight a man, and I was nuts, a little nuts. Okay, so all they had to do is do a background check on me, and they go, "Oh, you're on probation. And all they had to do was call the police, and I would have ran away, because that's not a winnable fight with the police. So, yes, that's what it would have taken, was having real knowledge about my vulnerabilities. As a teenager, I was vulnerable. I was on probation, just got out of a juvenile forestry camp, and I was vulnerable. But I wasn't letting no one know that, and if they had known that, they could have just picked up the phone and solved the problem. I would have went back to juvenile hall. So that's one way you're going to solve the neighborhood teen situation, right? Another situation regarding neighbors that causes great stress is when you live in an apartment building or a condominium, and you are neighbors with, there might be 10 or 20 people on your floor in the building, and you all have thin walls, and sometimes it's so close quarters that when I bug bomb my apartment, all the bugs run to the next door apartment. So it's very close, and that causes a lot of stress, because again, the loud music and the guests at all hours and parking wars and things like that cause a lot of stress in the apartment buildings and the condos. So if your bully is there, you're still going to follow the rules. You're going to do your background. Who are you messing with? We need to know who you're messing with. I know this lady, right? She had a bad neighbor. She gets in a fight with the bad neighbor, okay? And guess what? She didn't know that the bad neighbor was actually pregnant at the time of the fight. So guess what? Everyone in the neighborhood said, "Oh, you fighting a pregnant woman?" Oh, and so the whole neighborhood started attacking her, and so bad that she had to move. So guess what? She moved across town, all the way across town. Guess what? In her bad luck, she moved right next door to one of the cousins of the pregnant woman that she fought. So the bullying starts all over again. Now, she describes to me in the wall of the apartment is so thin that she can hear them threatening her through the wall. Okay? Crazy. I mean, talk about your peace of mind. Here you are, and you are trying to, read, watch TV, sleep, and you're hearing, "That damn neighbor, I'm gonna get him." And, they were threatening to jump her and making her feel very unsafe. So, the solution to this situation is know who your neighbor is, right? Know who your neighbor. I believe this. The first step that you want to do with any bad neighbor, remember our goal is to squash the problem, not make it grow, right? So a physical fight is the last thing on the list, okay? Because that's not going to solve a problem. That's going to make it bigger, right? So the first thing on the list is what we call mediation arbitration, right? Where you're trying to do a truce, a peace talk. Can we sit down and can we have a parlay where we're talking about a ceasefire, and how could we go to a place where you respect my right to live and I respect your right to live? And if they shoot you down and say no, right, then at least you tried for that ultimate, that's the best possible scenario. Because the more that artillery you bring in to the problem, the more likely it could blow up and hurt you both. Okay? That's what we're trying to avoid is an escalation. We're trying to squash the beef, right? And get the bully to back off.